I grew up on a council estate. My mum and dad didn't work, so we had a giro once a fortnight. But so I was poor, but I didn't really see myself as poor. But I think one of the other things that I noticed about where I was on the council estate is a pecking order, even in areas like that. So I was at quite low in the pecking order there. So I didn't have big brothers and sisters and loads of cousins that would look after me if I was going to get bullied. I was a ginger kid as well. So that kind of put you in a category of getting bullied again. So it was kind of difficult. I didn't have many friends and we didn't have much money, but it was what it was. I mean, there were really good things about it as well. We used to play out a lot. So I called myself a feral child. It was the days when you'd throw your kids out on the street and tell them not to come home until like tea time. Yeah. And we'd just be for hours and hours like playing on the old railway, which obviously is not used anymore, but the old railway line and things like that, and make rope swings, steal each other's dens, you know, carpets out of each other's dens, that sort of thing. So I was a very outdoor kid. But yeah, we didn't have much.
And you didn't have hot water either, did you?
We had a heating system that you had, immersion heat that you had to put on, and it was very expensive. And I remember them putting gas central heating into our council house. We got new gas central heating. I remember that being fitted, but we used to go to my nana's because my nana had a high-rise flat. So her hot water was constant. So on a Sunday, we'd go to my nana's and she'd iron all of our uniforms. She had a twin tub washing machine and she'd iron all our uniform, and it was just really, really nice. And she'd make us tatty ash, as I call it, potato ash, corned beef ash. And we'd have like loads of dead fresh bread with it, and we'd just be really full. And I remember that feeling of being really full, whereas often I was very hungry.
And Nana was a really key person in your childhood, wasn't she?
Huge, yeah. I mean, she worked 3 jobs, and because my mum and dad didn't have any money, we used to go around the charity shops with her. At weekend, we'd go weigh and save to get our like broken biscuits and get she'd get us some cereal. Often we didn't have it though because there wasn't enough milk in the house, so we'd run out. So I'd often go to school without any breakfast. Wow. But yeah, my nana used to go around all the charities. I remember she bought me steel toe cap boots because she said they'd last longer, and I used to get bullied really bad at school for having them. But yeah, it was tough, and I used to have a grant in them days for my school uniform. So I used to get 2 shirts and a skirt and a couple of pairs of socks, and they had to last me the year, basically.
So, I mean, amid all of that, at the age of 10, you became the main carer for your mum. Just tell us about that. It must have made everything so much harder.
I mean, there was always a problem with my mum. I think my mum had always had like a learning deprivation. She didn't go to school. She couldn't read or write. And when my mum hit her 30s, that's when her mental health really dipped. So where she was probably just about coping before, having 3 children, living in poverty and having to try and look after us all, I think she found incredibly difficult. My dad would be out a lot. My dad used to go out and drive out, and so he didn't really see it as his role to look after the children. So my mum would struggle. And so she couldn't look after us really. My nana tried, but obviously my nana was working a lot as well. So my mum found it really depressing. And that was when I sort of knew how difficult mental health was, because my mum used to cry and not get out of bed, and I used to worry about her. And she wouldn't wash, and she, you know, my mum's openly said that I used to bath her and things like that, because, you know, I became like her friend and her confidant. So, I mean, I was one of the youngest Samaritans in the Northwest. I kind of lured myself into that role because I was sort of grown up that way, really, because I just became my mum's main carer, looking after her. But for mental health reasons, she really struggled, and our house was really dirty. I remember being so embarrassed by it, and all of me and my 2 siblings are now really house proud. And it's because we just wouldn't let anyone near the house when we were younger, because it was so dirty, really filthy, that we were so frightened that someone had come in and see how bad the house was.
And when you saw your mum struggling with her mental health, you know, in bed, you had to sort of sit and watch over her, didn't you?
Yeah, I was so frightened. I mean, I remember one time she'd had a massive row. Often she'd row with my dad. My dad used to be really frustrated and shout at her a lot. And she was really upset, and she was on the bed, and I thought she was saying that she just didn't want to be here anymore. And I remember sleeping on the bottom of my mum's bed that night because my dad didn't come home. And I was just worried that if I left her, she wouldn't be there.
How old were you?
I think I was about 10. I was definitely still at primary school. I remember being there for my mum when I was still at primary school more. Because when I got to secondary school, I started to rebel a little bit more. When I got to about age 13, 14, I was pretty much self-reliant and looking after myself and staying out all weekend and things like that. So I was really young when I was looking after my mum, very young.
But that 10-year-old sitting at the bottom of the bed, fearful that your mum would take her life, what went through your head right then?
You don't know what to do. It's just those circumstances, the circumstances you find yourself in. And I think many people listening to this will sort of relate to it, that when you go through times of crisis, it's like when my son was born at 23 weeks and I spent 6 months in intensive care with him. People said, how did you cope? And it's like, well, really have much choice. It's your reality, and it's only as I've got older. It's like I say, I didn't know I was in poverty when I was younger. I didn't know that the fact that my mum couldn't read or write and that I'd not read a book before going into school made such a dramatic difference to my life chances. I didn't know any of that when I was growing up. I just knew the reality of what I faced. So it was petrifying, it was scary, but it was my reality. It was the reality, the violence that I saw on the streets, the criminality, the casualisation of drug use on the estate, all of those things, the police coming round to people's houses, and, police were seen as, against us, not with us. And all of those things were just the reality and the culture of where I grew up, really. And I didn't really see the difference until I was a lot older.
So after that incredibly hard start to life, how did you fare at school?
Not very well. So I was, like I say, I was behind at school, and I was always like personality, that was me. And because I'd looked after my mum, and because I grew up on an estate where you learn very quickly the pecking order, my natural gift has always been people. I'm a bit of a, like Del Boy, you have to understand the rhythm of where you are and the people around you. And I've always got that. So when I started secondary school, I was jovial. I was incredibly bullied again. I used to be frightened to go out of school because I'd just get absolutely leathered. But got to a point where there was this girl who said she'd be my friend if I hit someone back. So I did. And then people stopped battering me because I'd hit them back. And it sort of gave me, it wasn't because I was suddenly, I'd become well-had or anything. It was just, I just wanted a friend, and this person had said they'd be my friend. So, I did that, and then realised that people didn't pick on me so much because I took that many beatings through my life that they didn't really hurt me. What hurt me was not having anyone who I thought liked me. So it was nice to have a friend. And then we used to go out then, and we started going out and having a laugh and just hanging around bus stations, going to the airport, Manchester Airport on the bus. We used to do that. And and school then became more of a place of a chore because I didn't really like the work.
Yeah.
I was already behind and it didn't really fit with me. I'm a more of a sort of vocational person. Like I used to fix cars with my dad. My dad used to fix cars and he used to have me like holding the torch in the freezing cold rain while he's fixing the car, or I'd be cutting out a rocker box gasket out of a cornflake box. So I was more of a vocational learner than an academic one. So secondary school became quite academic. It takes a different turn to primary, and therefore I didn't like it. So by year 9, 10, certainly by the age of 13, 14, I decided that it was much more fun to be involved in the Manchester music scene and going out and having fun, because I looked a lot older as well, and I was more mature because of my life experience. So I used to go out with people who were a lot older than me and go to, clubs in Manchester and things like that. And I was a bit of a rebel.
And so it's a kind of short step from that to what you left school after getting pregnant with your son Ryan at 16.
Well, because I was out and about and having fun, but I was never I was always frightened of going that extra step with boys or anything like that. And the kids in school wouldn't go near me. They kissed me and say, just don't tell anyone I kissed you. It was really awful. They hated it. Like, it was just, being a ginger child was not a good thing in them days. I met Neil, and he was the first lad I sort of, went with, and got pregnant very quickly. When I was pregnant with Ryan, I just wanted to prove that I wasn't a scumbag. I wanted to make sure that he knew that his mum loved him, and I wanted to give him everything that I hadn't had.
But when you found out you were pregnant, do you remember the feeling looking at that pregnancy test, age 16?
Yeah, I was frightened. I was really frightened. I was frightened about my dad beating me up if he found out. I was frightened about what I was going to do. I was frightened about what it means.
What did your parents say when you told them?
My dad was just bitterly disappointed. You know, he said, well, that's it. Your life's over.
Did he beat you up?
No, he didn't at that. He was more, and that was kind of probably the first time I'd ever seen like pure disappointment in my dad's eyes. He was like, could tell that he was pretty cut up by it. My mum again, she didn't really get it. She's not really ever been the parent in our relationship. You know, she's always tried to help me. She's quite good at the practical things, especially with young kids. So she tried to help, she tried to assist, and my dad just sort of, you know, moved on. And I obviously at 16, I didn't want to be on the social. I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to try and work. So my nana said, if you got a job in the evening, if you put Ryan to bed, I can look after him. After she'd done 3 jobs herself, she used to come round my house, and I'd have put, I got a job as a home help doing the evening shifts because no one wanted to do it at the time and you didn't need experience. And I was good with people, so I thought I could do that. So I used to put like a big pot of stew on, and then I'd take it for my clients and they'd have their tea instead of making them those horrible Wiltshire Farm things or something. Apparently they've improved now, but you know, these meals, just to say that, these Meals on Wheels things, I used to bake like stew and then take little pots of stew for my tea calls, and I'd do some for my nana and Ryan, and then I'd go out and do my evening shift. Yeah, my nana would look after Ryan for me.
Did you hope, though, that Neil would stick around and sort of help you bring Ryan up?
I think Neil was a boy himself. I mean, he was older than me. He was 19 when I was 16. But I would say I was more mature. I was definitely more mature. So, you know, whilst he'd look after him, and it was very choppy, to say the least, it was pretty obvious that we wasn't ready for being parents together. It certainly wasn't something that I think Neil was ready for. And I outgrew him, to be brutal. I outgrew him very quickly.
Are you still in contact with him?
Yeah, I'm still in contact with him. Yeah, he still sees Ryan. So I remember him walking down the street once, and they both walk the same, like 10 to 2, like bounce. And that feet 10 to 2. And I thought, oh, there you go. They're very similar.
So let's talk about the first rung of the ladder, how you ascended the giddy heights to where you are now. How did you get introduced to politics?
Well, it was being a home carer. So I started off, my nana said if I got a job in the evening, she'd look after my son for me after she'd done her 3 jobs. And I got a job working for an agency, and I was what we'd know as today as a 0-hour contract. And no one wanted to do the evening and the weekends, and I was quite happy to do them. It fitted around my childcare. So I became a home carer, and then a few months later, some jobs at the council came up. So the girls who I worked alongside said, you've got experience, they pay your travel time and they'll pay your holiday pay. You should definitely apply. So I was one of the last home help to get a job in Stockport Council. And then to cut a long story short, we ended up in a situation where they wanted to outsource us. And I was saying to management, I've just come from the private sector. It's not as good. We can't do this. And the girls who I worked alongside said, you should be our union rep. And I said, what's a trade union? And the rest is history. I became the union rep at a time when we were looking at equal pay claims. So we were implementing single status, which was a job evaluation scheme for manual workers like myself. And that's how I really got involved in politics.
And you've described the union, Unison, as family, and you're actually now married to a Unison official with whom you have 2 sons. Union's got this reputation for being macho. We've had this report about GMB this week saying that they're institutionally sexist. Did you find Unison a tough environment?
I mean, being from the estate I was from, I was pretty much bullied and knew my pecking order and knew my place. So going into the union, actually, it was a place where I felt it accepted me for who I was. Was it perfect? No, of course it wasn't perfect. Did it have misogynism there? Yes, of course. It's like the Labour Party is, and any other organisation. It has the ills and the challenges that society has. But I felt valued for who I was. I felt I had a purpose. I felt I was part of something bigger than me.
You'd found your vocation.
I really had. And it's hard to describe to people that, you know, being a carer and being someone who looks after it, it's like being an MP now. I get so much from it.
You know, you were well on your way at this point. So let's talk about ascending the ladder. 2015, you became an MP, the first woman to represent Ashton-under-Lyne in Manchester. So what did the self-described ginger kid from the council estate make of Westminster when you plonked yourself on those squashy green benches for the first time? What did you make of it all?
Oh my God, I'd never seen anything like it. And you know, I remember I was on an event with a Tory MP. I was talking about the horses that were churning up the grass on our estate and how it was causing a load of trouble because I was getting a load of grief about it. And this Tory MP says, "Oh yes, we had that problem, but we've got llamas now." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "We've got llamas on the estate," and I'm like, "I'm talking about a council estate and the travellers' horses, like." And he was talking about horses on a country estate and that they don't have horses for that reason anymore. They have llamas because they're better for the grass. And I was like, this is different world, a completely different world. You know, in Parliament, everyone sends people letters congratulating them on the work that they do, which is their day job. I've never had that before. I'd get this handwritten note saying, "Angela, your speech today was absolutely tremendous. You did such a wonderful job. I'm so pleased you raised that point." I just thought that's my job. It's just a very weird place to get used to. You can't say you. Like, everyone says you. You have to say the honourable member. You can't call someone a liar, even if they're lying.
Does that need to change, do you think?
You know, I remember some really nice little old lady coming up to me after a speech once, and she said, "You did such a wonderful speech," she said, "but it's party, not party. There's a T in it." I said, "Well, from Manchester, where I'm from, it's party. That's the way we speak." I don't ever want to change, because I think if you're a kid from where I grew up, then if I start speaking differently, I'm kind of invalidating them.
In the leadership election earlier this year, Labour leadership, you were tipped for the top job. Why did you settle for deputy?
I don't see it as settling. I saw it as where my skill set was. They call it imposter syndrome, but I don't really see it like that. But I like helping others. I don't like being the main dish, and I found it really difficult being in the public eye and the scrutiny that I've had. Getting praise is not something that I got when I was growing up. I didn't get that nourishment. You know, my dad's saying was kids should be seen and not heard. So I'd gone from suddenly being nobody to being somebody, and I'd never got used to that. But I knew I had organising skills after 20 years in the trade union movement, and there were things that I knew I could do to make the Labour Party shine and get back in its grassroots again. If I was stuck in Parliament, I couldn't do that. Whereas if I can go out and about, which clearly hasn't worked out the way I wanted it because of the coronavirus, my favourite passion is rallying the troops, being out there and speaking to people on the doorstep, not stuck in Parliament and, you know, dealing with all the different modes of which the Parliament rhythm is. That's academic.
So you left the way clear for your friend and flatmate Rebecca Long-Bailey. It's reported that you came to some kind of deal on a camping trip to the Lake District. Is that right?
I find it really difficult that women, especially women in positions of power, almost are set up to compete with each other. And I didn't want to compete with Becky because I think Becky's an amazing politician, and I didn't want us to be up against each other. I didn't see that as helpful for the party. I didn't see it helpful for sisterhood, and I didn't see it as helpful for us going forward. And Becky wanted to stand for leader, and of course I was like, yeah, of course you should stand for it. You know, I think it's great. I just think that as women, we do get a tougher time in positions of power. I want the girls' network. And I know you've done a lot of work on that in the past, you know, trying to link people up and things like that. I think it's so important that us women look out for each other.
But no matter how much of a sister you are, it must have been quite galling for Rebecca Long-Bailey that she was resoundingly defeated and you won this resounding victory. What did you say to each other?
Oh, no, she was so happy for me. I mean, me and Becky came in 2015, and Keir Starmer did as well, and we were a close group. You know, we lost Jo Cox. She was murdered. We went through that as an intake together, and we also went through the battles, you know, from the front bench going on the back bench and the coup, and the 2015 intake had all been through that. So often people will think that, you know, we come from different political wings, but actually as a group, we're really tight and look out for each other. It has been tough, you know, people have got regular death threats. You know, Brexit brought out the best and worst in people. And it's not been an easy time to be a member of the UK Parliament.
But when your boss, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, sacked her in the anti-Semitism row. Was that the right decision? Were you cross with him?
You know, you've got to separate out the job that Keir has to do as the leader of the Labour Party and the role that each and every one of us have as members of that shadow cabinet. You know, if Keir Starmer did something wrong, I'd think nothing of calling him out on it, let me tell you.
What have you called him out on?
Because Keir's forensic, but he doesn't do much about his personal life. But if you know what motivates Keir, you'll know what an amazing individual he is, you know, looking after his mum, who was, you know, very, very poorly. I can disagree with him on the point of like policy or something like, but his core principles and what motivates him is tremendous. I have nothing but respect for him. And it was a bit weird starting off as we did in lockdown, a weird phone call. The first conversation me and Keir had was, if Boris Johnson doesn't make it in the next 24 to 48 hours, what happens? And he'd said to me, well, what happens if I get it and I get poorly? I need to make sure that immediately the system is in place that you become the leader.
Wow.
Which kind of shows you the type of man that he is.
So, Angela, you once said, I feel like I'm punching above my gene pool. I just wanted to get your advice to others who might be listening to this, who maybe have left school without qualifications. What do you say to them about how they can make it too?
Just be themselves and believe in themselves. That's the most important thing I can say and do something that makes you happy. Like so many people that were told you should become a lawyer, you should become a doctor, you should become a teacher, you should do this. And they don't like it. It's not what motivates them. As adults, we're just children in adult bodies, as far as I'm concerned. I'm still a big kid at heart. You know, you need to be happy in what you do. Pick something that you enjoy doing and, you know, go for it. Believe in yourself and recognise that you will have up days and down days. Surround yourself with positive people. Try and go for things that make you happy.
And is it also about working your socks off? Because I read somewhere that you sleep only 4 hours a night and you are incredibly hardworking.
Yeah, but that's just me. That's my motivation. I think you do have to sort of put a shift in. But if it doesn't feel like I work hard, because I do something that I incredibly love and enjoy. I never thought I'd get the opportunities I've got to this day. I've been on planes, I've gone to different countries, I've met people, I've met amazing people. I get to represent my constituents, I get to speak on their behalf in the oldest democracy. And it's an incredible privilege. So I don't really feel like it's work. I'm living my best life. But during this coronavirus, it's shown me what incredibly privileged I am to have a job that I really enjoy doing. My advice to people is pick something that you like to do that makes you happy. And if you're in a job now that you really don't like, then think about what you want to do to change that. And life goes by really, really quickly. So don't stick around waiting for tomorrow. Mañana. It's just get it done. Get it done.
You've mentioned you had rape and death threats last year and you had to have panic buttons fitted. Given the toll the job you're doing takes, would you advise your granddaughter to go into politics?
Yeah, because never let anyone tell you can't do something. Certainly not. I mean, I'm tenacious. And if someone says I can't do something, I'll go in the opposite direction and do it. And I just think democracy is too important to leave it up to other people. You've got to be involved. You've got to have a say. And yes, it's challenging at times. It's difficult that I do get those threats, but I won't be silenced. People are entitled to their opinion and respectfully disagree with me, and I'm entitled to mine and they're entitled to theirs. But, you know, trying to silence someone by violence or threats of violence, to me, is not the way things work. So I'd be incredibly proud if my granddaughter said, actually, I'm going to plough on. And the more you try and knock me down, the more I'm going to stand up to you and defy you, because that's the sort of spirit I expect from one of my offspring.
Well, Churchill's grandson, no less, Sir Nicholas Soames, called you the most glamorous granny. Do you feel that you're part of the establishment now?
Oh, I love Nicholas Soames. I'm a part of the establishment, probably. My mates think I'm a hybrid. I'm one of them, but I'm also part of the establishment. So I'm kind of accepted still on the estate I grew up on. And I don't mind that. I just think that more people like me needs to be part of the establishment, because the establishment is the people of this country. That's where the real power lies. And when they recognise that, that's when real change happens.
So you're going to be Prime Minister one day?
I'll never say never, hey. I never thought I'd be where I am today. Who knows? I mean, who could predict 12 months from now what's going to happen? I mean, for me, it's about making a difference and doing the best by the people that elected me. And I never forget that privilege that they've given me. And therefore, I never want to let them down. I just think every time I do something, how is this going to improve the lives of the people that I'm there to represent? And I just go at it full pelt.